वक्रतुण्डमहाकाय सूर्यकोटिसमप्रभ निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा। सरस्वती नमस्तुभ्यं वरदे कामरूपिणी विद्यारम्भं करिष्यामि सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परं ब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम्। वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये। नमोऽस्तुते व्यासविशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्दायतपत्रनेत्र येन त्वया भारततैलपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयप्रदीपः। श्रीकृष्ण शरणं मम। कृष्ण कन्हैया लाल की जय। We'll spend a few minutes and we'll sing the beautiful Ganga Stotra. If you know it, please join. Otherwise, you can clap along and listen. It's a praise of Ganga Maya, this stotra. Devi Sureshwari Bhagavati Gange Tribhuvana Tarini Tarala Tarange Shankara Mali Viharini Vimale Mama Matirastam Tava Padakamale Bhagirati Sukhadaini Mata Tava Jala Mahima Nigame Chata Namam Jane Tava Namam Jane Tava Mahimanam Pari Kripa Mahimamajnanam Hari Pada Padyatarangi Gange Hema Vidhumukta Dhavalatarange Duri Kuru Mama Dushkriti Haram Kuru Kripaya Bhavasagara Param Tava Jalamamalam Yena Nipitam Paramapadam Khalu Tena Grihitam Matargange Tvayo Bhaktam Kilatam Drashtum Nayamahashakta Patito Dharini Jahnavi Gange Khandita Girivara Mandita Bhange Bhishma Janani He Munivara Kanye Patita Nivarini Tribhuvana Dharine Kalpalatameva Phaladam Loke Pranamati Yasvam Napadati Shoke Paravara Viharini Gange Vimukha Yuvati Krita Taralapange Tava Chinmata Sruta Snata Punarapi Jakhare Sopi Najata Naraka Nivarini Jahnavi Gange Kalusha Vinashini Mahimokunge Punarasadange Punyatarange Jaya Jaya Jahnavi Karunapange Indra Mukutamani Rajita Charani Sukhade Shubhade Pritya Sharani Rogam Shokam Tapam Tapam Harani Bhagavati Kumati Kalakam Tribhuvana Sare Vasurahare Tvamasi Gate Mama Khalu Samsare Malakanande Paramanande Guru Karunamayi Kataravande Tava Tatanikate Yasya Nivasa Khalu Vaikunte Tasya Nivasa Varamehanire Kamatho Meena everybody. A very good evening to all of you. I'm so happy to be here on this third night of Mahabharata Yajna. So we've seen 2 nights so far about this wonderful itihasa, the story and some life lessons as they come up. And before I start, just something to think about. You know, back in the day when you went to the store and there was one toothpaste and that's the toothpaste you bought, and there was one soap and that's the soap you bought, and there was one oil and that's the oil you bought. Life was so simple, isn't it? Now you go and you have 10 different brands of toothpaste, and within that brand you have 10 or 20 different varieties. And then you stand there and you're like, but which one should I buy? But what did you do when there was only one? Life was so much easier. You know, as a vegetarian, when I go into, if we ever have to go and eat food outside, usually there are 2 or 3 choices maximum for vegetarian people. It's very easy, you look and you choose. But when you go to a vegetarian restaurant, then the trouble is proper, because now you can choose anything from the menu. So it is an observed principle that wherever there is choice, there is confusion. Correct or wrong? You notice that too? Wherever we have more choice, we have more confusion. And the interesting thing about human life is that we have the freedom of choice. Animals don't have the freedom of choice. A tiger will only eat what it is biologically meant to eat, and a dog will only eat what it is biologically meant to eat, and they will only eat as much as nature allows them. And every animal in nature is being taken care of by the laws that govern that animal. It is only when it comes to human beings that we have been given the freedom of choice. And the more freedom we have of choice, the more confusion. And the more confusion we have, the more opportunities for us to make wrong decisions. How many times have you made a wrong decision because you had choice? Countless, isn't it? Huh? And the more wrong decisions we make, the more sorrow we have. That is a standard observed principle. If you make a wrong decision, you have to face the consequences. Huh? So the animals that live according to the laws of nature, they are fully taken care of. They have nothing to worry about. And then you might think, oh, that's not fair. Why should they only have that kind of life, right? But actually, if we want that kind of sorrow-free life, we have a choice too. And the choice is very simple, actually. If we live according to the law of dharma, there's nothing that we need to worry about. Following the law of dharma, that itself ensures that whatever choices we make, they will be the right choices. And when the right choice is made, there is no confusion, and there is no negative consequence, and there is no resultant sorrow. This law of dharma that we're supposed to use to guide our life is not an easy one, because our lives are not straightforward. They're very complex. So the complexity of our life means that the law of dharma also will necessarily be complex. What is dharma today may not be dharma in 10 years. And what is dharma for me may not be dharma for you. Everybody's dharma at different points in their life, different places in life, different situations will be different. And so when we study the Mahabharata, what it does is it presents to us a canvas, a painting in front of us. It shows of what happens when a person follows dharma and what happens when a person doesn't follow dharma. It gives these 2 presentations to us. Not only that, it also teaches us the costs and the consequences of choosing the wrong path. It also shows us how the wrong path was chosen so that we can start to become more aware of our own decision-making process to try and reduce the amount of wrong decisions we will make and to try to choose dharma more. And so Mahabharata is trying to teach us not to do any action without first thinking about it. Mahabharata shows us don't do something that you're not sure if you're fit to do. It teaches us to think before we act. And before we think, it teaches us to learn. So you learn about something, then you think about it, and then only you act. And so the Mahabharata does not give commandments. It doesn't say do this and don't do this. It presents life as it is, in all of its negative realities. And amidst that canvas, we try to take out lessons for our own life. So where we are in the story of Mahabharata is so vast that it is impossible for somebody to study and tell and remember the entire thing exactly as it has been presented. Because not only is there the main story of the Mahabharata, there are endless sub-stories and sub-stories and sub-stories to those stories, and you could literally get lost in this whole web of stories. So over the 14 days of this yajna, we're seeing just the main story and only backstories that pertain to the main story that is being told. So what we have seen so far, there was a king called Shantanu, and he belonged to the Bharata dynasty. He got married to Ganga Devi, and with Ganga Devi, he had a son called Devavrata, who later became known as Bhishma. Then he got married to another lady called Satyavati, and Satyavati was the daughter of a fisherman, and together they had two sons, Chitrangada and Vichitravirya. It so happened that Chitrangada died when he was very young. Well, he died in battle in a circumstance, and Vichitravirya also died young. He was married, but he died before he had children. And so now, this kingdom of Hastinapur, where they are living, it doesn't have an heir to the throne. Because Bhishma, who was supposed to be the heir to the throne, relinquished his right to the throne in exchange for his father being allowed to marry Satyavati, his second mother. And so he had taken this great vow that he would relinquish his right to the throne, he would never get married, so none of his children would ever be there to challenge the throne, and he would always serve the throne of Hastinapur. And so what happened is now Hastinapur was left without an heir, and Satyavati, who's the queen, she tells Bhishma, her son now, about a backstory where she has another child. And she talks about the strange circumstances around the child's birth. That child was none other than Bhagavan Veda Vyasa. It was, there was a rishi going across the river with her, and he said, if we have a child at this time, that child will become the most exceptional saint of all times. And so, with the strength of the words of the rishi, she ended up having this child who ended up becoming the great Bhagavan Veda Vyasaji, because of whom we have Sanatana Dharma with us here today. And according to the circumstances that prevailed at that time, he ended up being the actual biological father of the next princes of this dynasty. His mother Satyavati called him and said that according to Dharma, it is permitted for you to give children to my daughters-in-law so that the lineage can continue. And so thus, Dhritarashtra, Pandu, and Vidura were born in the Kuru dynasty. Is everyone following? I know I'm going very quickly through the recap. If you're hearing the story for the first time, it will be overwhelming, but you may have heard the story before also, so it's a little recap for those who know the story. One really interesting thing happened at the time of birth of conception of Dhritarashtra, Pandu, and Vidura. When Dhritarashtra was being conceived, his mother closed her eyes, and Dhritarashtra was born blind. When Pandu was being conceived, his mother was pale with fright, and so Pandu was born pale and sickly. And this is an important reminder to us that we don't make children. Actually, all children that exist are jivas that already exist in this universe. And based on the disposition of the parents and the prarabdha of the parents and who the parents are at the time of conception, accordingly, a jiva will be pulled from the universe that matches the karma of that family. And like that, Dhritarashtra, Pandu, and Vidura were born. Vidura was the son of a maidservant. So now, Hastinapur this queen has 3 grandchildren. One is blind. You cannot have a blind king in your kingdom, so he wasn't able to rule. Pandu was given the kingdom instead because Vidura, even though he was such a dharmic person, he was born to the maidservant, so he couldn't claim rights to the throne. Dhritarashtra was very bitter about the fact that even though he was the eldest, he was not able to be king because he was blind. He thought that was unfair. Pandu was a dynamic leader, and yesterday we saw that Dhritarashtra got married to a princess called Gandhari, and she blinded herself for life, saying, if my husband cannot enjoy the pleasures of this world, I should not either. And Pandu got married to Kunti and Madri. So now Dhritarashtra has his wife Gandhari, and Pandu has his wives Kunti and Madri. Everything seems to be going normally, but you all know in life nothing goes smooth. So something has to come to cause problems in the smoothness of life. What happens is Pandu is in the forest one day, and he's hunting, which is a common sport that kings used to do in those days, and he ends up shooting a deer that is mating with its companion. And that deer happened to be a rishi. And that rishi said, how is it that you belong to such a great lineage and you did such an adharmic thing? Hunting is one thing, but you have to hunt within the laws of dharma also. You cannot kill an animal that is sleeping or mating. So many different rules are there. And he said, because of this act of yours, I curse you, that the moment that you try to embrace your wife, you will die that instant. And so Pandu, cursed like this now, he decides to relinquish the throne, relinquish the kingdom, and live in the forest because he realizes he needs to live a life of self-control. And self-control is not something that he imagines will be easy in the kingdom. It is something that will be easy in the forest around the rishis and the munis who are naturally practicing self-control. And so his wives take off their princess attire and jewelry, and they decide to also live in the forest with their husband, Pandu. Pandu lives a wonderful, noble life of self-control, but he has in his heart a feeling, and this is where we are supposed to pick up today. He has in his heart a feeling that he does not have any children. And people say that it is only when you have a child that your life feels complete. Many people feel that. People feel if you don't have a child, your life is not complete. And so one day he was lamenting to Kunti Devi that, we don't have children and my life feels like it is incomplete. And so Kunti Ma tells him, I have something to tell you. And now she tells him about something, a secret from her past. What is that? She said when she was a young girl, she was living with her adopted father, Kunti Bhoj, in his kingdom. Durvasa Rishi had come to do some tapas over there. And he said, I'm going to do my sadhana now, and there needs to be someone who takes care of me. I don't know if you know, but Durvasa Rishi is a very powerful rishi with a very short temper. So as soon as people hear the Durvasa Rishi is coming, they want to run away, because if you just breathe in the wrong way, he will get angry. Like he's so sensitive, he'll get angry very quickly. Remember in Mahabharata, we are reminded that no character or no person is perfect. Everyone will have good and bad in them. Everyone will have positive and negative traits in them, including the great rishis. The only perfect being in this universe will be Bhagavan himself. And so this Durvasa Rishi, he's so quick to get angry that Kunti Bhoj says, we need the right person to tend to him. And so he tells his daughter Kunti, who might have been maybe 12 to 14, around there, quite a young girl, that I want you to be the one to take care of all of his needs. And so she is so virtuous, so patient, so pious, so noble, so attentive, so aware that Durvasa Rishi has absolutely nothing that he can complain about in the way that Kunti Devi takes care of him during his sadhana. And he is so pleased with her, and he says at the end of his sadhana, he says, I am so pleased with you, I want to give you something. And so he teaches her a mantra by which she can invoke any devata, and that devata will come to her. So he gives her this mantra, he teaches her this mantra, and he leaves. Now she's a young girl. And so one day she's woken up early in the morning and she's looking outside and she's staring at the sky, and she sees Surya Bhagavan, this brilliant orb, golden brilliant orb rising in the sky. And she thinks, I wonder what he looks like. I wonder if the mantra works. I wonder if he will actually come if I chant this mantra. And so she chants the mantra, and Surya Devata shows up to her. It's like the brilliance of the sun literally becomes a person in front of her. And this wonderful Surya Devata is in front of her, and she says, oh my God, the mantra works. And he looks at her and he says, well, you have invoked me, what can I do for you? She says, no, I don't want you to do anything for me. I just wanted to know if the mantra worked, and I wanted to see you. And he said, well, the fruit of the darshan of a devata cannot be fruitless. And it seems she did not know that when she chants this mantra and the devata comes, the purpose of the devata coming is to leave an amsha of himself with her, meaning that the devata is going to give her a child. And so he says, I will give you a child. And she says, but I am such a young girl. What do you mean? What will people say? What will my father say? I can't accept this child. And he says, well, this is the way the mantra works. And so she has no choice, and she is left with a child of Surya Bhagavan. Now please remember that we only know of physical conception, right? But in those times, there was something called, Drishti Matra. By mere vision, she was given this child. And so, actually it shows the power of thought. Just by mere thought, a being could be created. It actually is a very powerful reminder to us about the power of our thoughts. Do we not create things in our mind? We create fears that are not real. We create diseases. I mean, medical science is showing how people's thoughts actually create diseases in them. There are so many negative things that we can create. There are so many positive things also we can create. Our thoughts are very powerful. Anyways, so now this child is born with the brilliance of the sun, because he's an amsha of Surya Bhagavan. And he's born with golden earrings and a golden kavach, like an armor. It is like the rays of the sun solidified into this protection of this baby. And so she thinks, well, it is unacceptable for me to have a child at this age. So what she does is she takes this child, this baby, and she puts him in a box, and she wraps him in a silk cloth. And she takes this baby and she puts this box in the Ganga, and she prays to Ganga Maya, you please take care of this child and make sure that he is safe. And so at that moment, her tears are flowing from her eyes onto this baby as she bids this baby farewell, knowing she will never see him again in his life. At that moment, the young, cheerful, bubbly Kunti is gone, and in her place, a sad, grown-up, intense, serious woman is born. A girl is gone, and a woman is born. And for the rest of her life, this thing that she had to do weighs a burden on her. You know, we may ask, was she right in her thinking? Is it true that she would have been shunned by society? Would things have played out differently if she hadn't sent that child away? We're not also supposed to be judging the characters of the Mahabharata. We're supposed to be observing their decisions and seeing the consequences of those decisions to learn from them. There is a Kunti in us too. Not only in women, in every single human being, there is a Kunti in all of us. The part of us that has dark secrets that weigh us down. It can be a tiny secret, like a lie we have told. Or it could be a big secret of something that we did that we don't want society to know about. True or false? everyone has some dark secret in their heart. Little children also. That Kunti in us who keeps this secret, and it burns you from the inside, but you can't do anything. So actually, this child of Kunti was born like that. Now she doesn't tell Pandu about this child. She just tells Pandu that Durvasa Rishi has given me this mantra and I have the power to invoke any of the devatas that I want. And so Pandu thinks, well, this is great. Now we can have children, because whoever the child of the mother is automatically becomes known as the child of the father. So he says, let our first child be a child of dharma. Invoke Dharmaraj, who is none other than Yamaraj, and let our first child be dharmic and noble. And so Kunti Ma uses this mantra and she invokes Dharmaraj, and out of that invocation is born Yudhishthira, the first child of Pandu and Kunti. Then Pandu says, okay, now I want a second child. Where there is dharma, it needs to be accompanied by strength. You need strength to uphold dharma. So invoke Vayu Devata so that our second child will be a child of strength to support our first child in following dharma. And so she does that, and she invokes Vayu Devata, and out of that invocation is born Bhima, the second Pandava. Bhima is, if you were to imagine what Bhima is, he is like your poster child, cute, chubby, sweet, comic relief child that is born. And he is so strong. You cannot even imagine how strong he is. It is said one time as a baby, something happened and he fell, and there was a loud noise and he hit a rock. And they were worried about him and what happened to him. And they went to see, and look, the rock had broken because he hit it. That is how powerful this Bhima was. So this was Pandava number 2, Bhima. Then Pandu said, where there is dharma and where there is strength, there will automatically be fame. I want my third son to be a hero. So invoke Indra Devata and let that son of mine be the third one. And so she invokes Indra Devata, and out of that, and from that she is blessed with Arjuna. Arjuna is the son of none other than Indra Devata, the king of Svarga. And so he's like, okay, next. And she's like, stop. In dire circumstances, even in dire circumstances, you can only use these kind of mantras 3 times. 3 is the limit. You can't keep going on and on and on, 3 is the boundary that you cannot cross, and even extenuating circumstances where you break normal dharma. And so she's already feeling guilty because it is not the 3rd time but the 4th time that she has used the mantra, but she can't say it, and that guilt will be there with her forever, right? But then Pandu says, well, why don't you teach this mantra to Madri, then my next wife? And Madri and Kunti are like sisters. They're not typical rival wives, And so Kunti teaches it to Madri, but for some reason Madri can only use it 1 time. And so Madri thinks, since I can only use this mantra once, I should invoke the Ashwini Kumars. And because she invokes the Ashwini Kumars, she gets twins. And the twins that she gets are Nakula and Sahadev. So now Pandu has 5 children. It is said that Nakula was the most handsome person. The description given in Mahabharata is that you cannot even take your eyes off him if you see him. And he was brilliant with horses. And Sahadev was described to be very intelligent. In fact, accompanying his intelligence, he also had a siddhi. Not many people know about this. He also had a siddhi, a power by which he developed this power by which he could see everything in the future. And the moment that he developed this siddhi, Bhagavan Sri Krishna came and swore him to silence, because we are not supposed to know the future. Actually, Bhagavan Sri Krishna didn't say don't talk. He said the rule is this: if someone asks you anything, you have to answer with only yes or no. So most of Sahadev's conversations were yes or no answers. Then Bhagavan Sri Krishna said, if they ask you a second time, you can answer them in brief. If they ask you a third time, you can tell them whatever it is you know. But you know, when you ask somebody questions and they give you curt, brief replies, you don't care to continue talking to them. So Sahadev was known as the brother who barely spoke. But nobody knew that the reason for his not speaking was because he actually could see everything into the future. We are not supposed to know our future. It is a big burden to know our future. You'll see how that is, right? So he doesn't live an easy life, but because of his power, he has like a special connection with Bhagavan Krishna. Because whenever something is about to happen that he knows, he can just look at Bhagavan Krishna from the side of his eye and they have like a secret conversation, like, okay, we both know what's going to happen. So he has that special relationship with Bhagavan Krishna because of that. Bhagavan Krishna happens to be the first cousin of all these Pandavas, because Kunti Ma is the sister of Vasudevji. So they're actually first cousins, huh? Okay, now, interestingly, the 5 Pandavas put together make the perfect, ideal person. But they are 5 brothers, okay? And so now they're in the forest and they're brought up by the rishis that are there, and they're educated and they're taught not just spiritual education, but also how to use weapons, because they're princes. So they're brought up as princes by the rishis also. And like this, they live very peacefully and very happily in the forest. Now let us go back to the palace. In the palace, Dhritarashtra is living with his wife Gandhari. And Dhritarashtra is living a life of self-pity. You know, people who just feel sorry for themselves all their life and they just mope and grumpy all the time because they feel like life is unfair to them. Dhritarashtra is that perfect example of that kind of person, right? He's just sitting there feeling sorry for himself. Now what happens is Gandhari also becomes pregnant. Around the same time that Kunti is pregnant with Yudhishthira. But it so happens that Yudhishthira is born before Gandhari gives birth. And Dhritarashtra says, look, our last hope of keeping the kingdom is gone. If I had a child first, then that child may have been the heir to the throne. But now Yudhishthira is the first child, so that hope is gone. And he expresses his sorrow to Gandhari that their child is not yet born. And in a helpless effort, Gandhari induces her own labor. And at that time, what happens is she gives birth to a lump of flesh because that child is not ready to come out. So now in panic, they call Veda Vyasaji. What to do? And so Veda Vyasaji takes this lump of flesh and divides it into 100 little pieces and puts it into little pots with ghee. And he says, in time, you're going to get 100 sons out of these pots. Sounds weird, but this is, nothing but science has seen test tube babies and all of that too, right? And so like this, the 100 Kauravas were eventually born. And one sister also from this process, right? The first child to emerge from these pots was Duryodhana, the first of the Kauravas. And when he was born, means when he manifested out of this pot, there were really evil omens all around. Really, really, really evil omens, like donkeys braying, and you could tell that this was inauspicious signs. And so Dhritarashtra went to Vidurji, who is this great, wise, dharmic minister who happens to be his brother also. And he tells him, I sense that there are all of these inauspicious signs. Can you tell me, what the cause of this is? And Vidurji tells Dhritarashtra, this son of yours that has just been born is going to be the cause of the destruction of the entire Kuru dynasty. And he tells him something so profound. Actually, let us chant that verse that he tells him, and then we will see what it is. Shri Krishna Kanhaiya Lal Ki Jai. Vidurji, the wise Vidurji, is speaking to his brother now, and he is advising him about the ill omens that have come about at the time of birth of his first child. And he says to him, for the sake of the family, a single individual can be sacrificed. For the sake of the village, one family can be sacrificed. For the sake of the community, one village can be sacrificed. And for the sake of the self, the earth, the world can be sacrificed. This is what he tells him. And then he goes on to tell him, considering the fact that this child is going to be the destruction of the entire dynasty, it is in line with dharma, and it is appropriate, and it is my advice for you to destroy this child now, when he is a baby. To sacrifice this child for the sake of the family, for the sake of the village, for the sake of the community. This child who is of such ill omens should be sacrificed. What would you do? First child, going to be the destruction of everything and everyone that you know. It is in line with dharma to sacrifice the child. But out of excessive attachment, Dhritarashtra cannot bring himself to do that. And knowing that this child is going to cause such destruction, he allows him to live. Duryodhana goes on to become the actual trigger for everything that unfolds, you'll see. Now this weakness of his attachment to his child, is what does not stop the war in the final last days also. We'll see when we get there. And so Dhritarashtra is an example to us of what happens when we have extreme attachment and we let our attachment cloud our decision-making capacity to consider what is good for everybody. We do this all the time. Out of attachment, we make wrong decisions. Out of attachment, we make selfish decisions, not considering the effect it is going to have on other people. Dhritarashtra is a window into our own very selves. Parents are culprit to this. I see smiles, I mentioned this only and I see smiles, I don't need to say anything about it, right? I have heard Swamiji say so many times that parents are the obstacle to the children's education in the Vidyalaya. Meaning, it is the parents that out of their attachment for the children don't give room for the children to be groomed into dynamic, dharmic people. Interesting, isn't it? Anyways, so this is what happens, and in time, the 100 sons of Dhritarashtra are born and the one daughter. And you don't need to know all of their 100 names. The only names you need to know is Duryodhana, Dushasana, and Dhritarashtra also has another son from another woman, and his name is Yuyutsu. He will feature later. But these are now all the princes that have been born. We go back to the forest and we see what happens as the children are growing up over there. Things cannot be so smooth. I mean, if Duryodhana has to cause trouble, somehow the two have to meet. The two sets of cousins have to meet, right? So one day, Pandu finds himself with an irresistible urge to embrace his wife, Madri. And she says, no, what is wrong with you? You know the curse, you're going to die. No. And that desire is just so strong that he can't help himself. And as he comes to try to embrace her, at that moment he dies. And so now, with everything going perfect, something has to happen. And Pandu's death changes everything. So now Madri goes to Kuntima and she tells her, come, I have to tell you something. And Kuntima's like, what is wrong with you? Didn't you know he would die? And she says, no, it is not my fault. I couldn't help it. I couldn't do anything. And so, well, they have to accept the things the way they are. And Madri feels so guilty and she feels so bad. And she says, I'm going to climb the pyre with Pandu. I'm going to go with him. I cannot live anymore. And Kunti says, well, I'm going to go too. You know, this thing is called sati. And please let me mention here, it has been, with colonization and all, things have been perverted in their presentation many times, right? With agendas. But what sati was it was not mandatory, but if you found, in some cases, there were some wives who were so pious, so devoted to their husband, they felt their husband was Bhagavan himself. And they felt like they had no purpose in life apart from being with their husband. And they also understood that there is life beyond this life. And so they felt, rather than living on without my husband, I want to go with him so I can be with him in his next life as well. And so voluntarily, women were given the opportunity or the option, if they so willed, to accompany their husband in the next life if the husband died before them. And so the rishis said, well, both of you can't go, you have children, right? And so in a discussion between the two of them, Madri says, look, Kunti, you will be able to see all 5 children as your own. I won't. So you please stay back and let me go. And that is how finally they make the decision. And Madri says to Nakula and Sahadev, Kunti is your mother and Yudhishthira is your father now. And she goes in the pyre with Pandu. So now Madri is gone, Pandu is gone, and the rishis are thinking now what to do with one widow and 5 children here in the forest. And they say the best thing to do is that you all now go back to Hastinapur. You belong to a kingdom. They will take care of you over there. They should take care of you. And so the rishis of the forest who've been bringing up these children all these years personally take Kuntima and her 5 children to Hastinapur. Now, they're going to Hastinapur for the first time. Bhishma is there. Satyavati, the grandmother, is there. Ambika, Ambalika, the daughters, the daughter-in-laws of Satyavati are there. Mothers of Dhritarashtra and Pandu. Dhritarashtra is there, all his children are there. And for the first time now they're meeting these 5 boys, and after many years they're meeting Kunti. And they're all devastated to hear about the death of Pandu. For one it is a grandchild, for one it is a child, for one it is a brother. And so everyone is really sad about this news. Long story short, now they come and they live in the palace with them. Veda Vyasaji is here at this time. He is part of the rites, the final rites that are done for Pandu at this time. And he tells his mother Satyavati, now actually the destruction of the Kuru dynasty is inevitable. From this moment on, the destruction of the Kuru dynasty is inevitable. You're not going to be able to bear the pain of seeing your great-grandchildren fight with each other and destroy each other on the battlefield. You won't be able to do this. My advice to you is give up everything and go to the forest. Part of Hindu Dharma is we're supposed to eventually drop everything, drop family life, drop our duties and go and be a vanaprasthi, be a sannyasi. And so he encourages his mother to leave everything and to go. And his mother, Satyavati, thinks, well, this is a great idea. And so she asks her daughters-in-law if they would like to come with her. They also cannot imagine staying to witness the downfall of the family. So the 3 of them decide to go to the forest. Satyavati calls Bhishma Pitamaha and she says, this is what we have decided. We are going to go. We cannot bear to stand the destruction of the family. Veda Vyasaji has advised I won't be able to handle it. And so Bhishma says, mother, I have been given the boon of choosing the time of my own death. I am also tired. I can't handle this anymore. I also don't want to face what is to come. Let me also come with you. And at this point, Satyavati looks at Bhishma and she says, I asked you for something one time and you said no. This time I'm going to ask you for something and you cannot say no. You're not allowed to leave this place until there is a appropriate heir of the throne who is going to be taking care of the kingdom. You cannot leave here until everything is well settled. And so poor Bhishma, who is not actually supposed to be the king, is now left with the burden of taking care of the kingdom and bringing up 106 children that are not actually his. Because Pandu is dead and Dhritarashtra is blind. And so Bhishma is the one who's in charge of everybody. And so the weight of this entire family and its destruction is now on the shoulders of poor Bhishma Pitamaha. Anyways, so now they have gone back to the palace. And Dhritarashtra cannot see, but he can feel. Actually, that reminded me, one auntie here in Guyana told me, she was telling something about her grandchild. And she says, if you can't hear, you have to feel. Right? And so like that. I mean, everyone can feel. You can't hear, you can't see, you can't anything. Eventually you have to feel, right? Dhritarashtra can't see, but he can feel. And so he feels Yudhishthira's presence. And he feels the impact of the presence of Yudhishthira in the palace now. And he realizes what a noble king Yudhishthira would be. But the attachment that he has to his son is so strong that all he can think in his mind is, oh my God, because of him, now my son is not going to be able to be king. How unfortunate, how sad, and he's lamenting about this fact, and Yudhishthira feels what Dhritarashtra is feeling towards him, right? Not only that, like father, like son, Duryodhana is so jealous of these 5 Pandavas when they come. Imagine he was like the boss in the kingdom. The firstborn is always the spoiled one who's given everything and all attention and everything. And so now all of a sudden, these 5 new children come into the home and everyone is doting over them and they're so loving and they're so lovable and they're so kind, and he cannot bear to have the attention removed from him and given to them. Most of all, he is jealous of Bhima. Bhima is strong. Bhima is cute. Bhima is powerful. And he sees that Bhima is the glue that is the strength of these 5 brothers. And so now Duryodhana's jealousy is burning so strong that the brothers feel it. Yudhishthira is very aware of Duryodhana's jealousy. Now see what happens. The boys start to get to know each other. They start to play with each other. They're cousins. And I mean, cousins are considered brothers. Back in the day, it was very clear. Till now also. You'll not say, this is my cousin. You'll say, this is my brother. Right? They're brothers. Living. 105 brothers living together. What happens when there's 2 siblings? Parents complain all the time. Oh God, these children, they can't stop fighting. Oh God, these children. 105, what to do then? And not only that, there are some of them who hate each other. One jealous of another and everything. So you can only imagine the kinds of events that unfolded. So there's really funny stories also how, the boys would climb trees, and then Bhima was so powerful that he would go and he would hold the tree and he would shake it so all of the Kaurava boys would fall like fruits falling from the tree. And like this, they would play games, and then the intensity of the hatred kept growing. And Duryodhana, okay, let me say this. It is normal for a child to be jealous of another child when that new child comes into the home. You see that, right? Like when the new baby is born, the firstborn is jealous. And some of them have thoughts of, I want to kill this baby and I hate this baby, and all of those thoughts are normal. But what was not normal in Duryodhana's case is he never grew out of those thoughts. The children eventually grew out of those thoughts. He never grew out of those thoughts. Not only though he didn't grow out of it, those thoughts were there with him till he's dying on the battlefield, and he still has those thoughts with him. He never grew out of those thoughts. So now Duryodhana had an uncle. His mother's brother was called Shakuni. And Shakuni was angry. In his heart, he had a grudge against Bhishma, that Bhishma asked for Gandhari to marry Dhritarashtra, who is blind. Why should my sister marry somebody who is blind? This is the thought in his head. And so he takes this grudge and he says, I'm going to make sure this family pays for what they have done to my sister. His sister is happy. She has no complaints. But he takes it in his own mind that he's going to make sure this family pays. So he goes there now to choke fire. He's the mastermind problem causer over here. The boys are young. And Duryodhana is complaining to Shakuni Mama one day, his mama, that this Bhima, he is the problem. If only we could get rid of him somehow. And so young Duryodhana and his Mamu Shakuni come up with a plan to get rid of Bhima. See what they do. These Kaurava boys invite the Pandava boys for a picnic by the river one day. They say, come, let us go for a picnic. And so they have games and they have food and they have everything that a picnic has, and they're all happy playing together. And then Duryodhana invites Bhima into the tent and he feeds him with the most delicious food. Now Bhima is strong, he's a big guy and he loves food. And our enemies usually target our weaknesses. Bhima's weakness is his food. What Duryodhana had done is, with the advice of his Mamu, he had laced all of the food he was feeding Bhima with poison. So he was poisoning this young Bhima with the food that he was feeding him with pretentious love. And so Bhima eats all this food and he becomes unconscious because that poison is really strong. And so they bind him now. They take vines and they bind him and they tie him and they throw him into the river where they have put poisonous snakes. And then they all go home. And time to go home, Yudhishthira is looking for Bhima and nobody can find Bhima. So they wonder, well, maybe he's already gone back home to his mother looking for food over there. They go back home and they can't find Bhima. And now they're wondering what happened. So they go back to look for him, but Bhima is nowhere to be found. Why? Because they had thrown Bhima, who had been poisoned, into the river. Now see what happened. The snakes in the river started to bite Bhima. They started to bite him with the intention to poison him. And it so happened that the poison of the snakes ended up being an antidote to the poison that was given to Bhima by Duryodhana. And so Bhima did not die with the poison, he became resistant to it. And he woke up and he was powerful, so he broke all the chains that he was in, and he started to kill these snakes under the water that were biting him. So now these snakes, in panic, they ran to their boss Vasuki and they said, we don't know, there's this child who has come and we were trying to bite him and kill him, and instead of dying he wakes up and he started to kill us. And Vasuki said, bring this child to me, who is he? And they realized that this is Bhima, this is the child of Kunti. And Vasuki says, no, he's not supposed to be killed. He belongs to a noble family. He's a dharmic person. He's a great person. In fact, we should shower him with gifts and send him back. Let us give him jewels and gems and presents and send him back. And one of the snake ministers over there says, but he's already a prince. What is he going to do with jewels and gems? He must have so much of that already. And so they think, oh yes, that is true. And so an idea comes up, why don't we give him some amrit, the nectar that will make him strong. And so they give him a bowl of amrit, and Bhima drinks this huge bowl in one sip. They're like, what, he drank that already? And so they give him more, and they tell him, drink as much as you want. And so he drinks 8 bowls of this amrit. And it is said that each bowl had the capacity to give you the strength of 1,000 elephants. And so he drank 8 bowls. So now Bhima, who is already powerful, gets the strength of 8,000 elephants. And then he goes to sleep. And he sleeps for 8 days because, he's just developing power, or I don't know how it works, right? And so Bhima goes to sleep for 8 days. Now back in the palace, Kunti Ma is so worried about what happened to Bhima. And so she asks Vidurji, what do we do? And Vidurji says to her, no, look, your children have been blessed with a long life. So Bhima is going to be fine, right? Let us wait and watch and see what happens. Don't worry, he's fine. Bhima comes after these 8 days. And you can imagine, Yudhishthira is just brimming with love, and he's so happy to see him. And because Yudhishthira and Bhima were the closest two, right? He's overjoyed. All the brothers are so happy to have him back. Kunti Ma is so happy to have him back. The only people who are not happy are, well, Duryodhana and Shakuni cannot understand what happened, how he's back. And Bhima tells them what happened. And with Vidurji, they have a discussion and they say, don't say anything about it. If Duryodhana comes to know that we know about his wickedness, then he's going to put all the children's lives at risk. So just be on alert, just be aware, don't say anything, don't make a big deal out of it. This was Vidurji's advice. Now just think a little bit about this episode. Bhima was poisoned through his weakness by his enemy. And instead of becoming weaker, he became stronger. What was the turning point that turned his weakness into strength? It was the fact that he was noble. This is a true principle in life. Whenever an enemy tries to pull you down, whatever it is that they use to pull you down ends up becoming your strength, your weapon, a stepping stone to your greatness if you are living a noble, dharmic life. All the blows of our enemy become stepping stones for our greatness. Because when we are on the path of dharma, Bhagavan himself becomes our protector. And if Bhagavan has a purpose for Bhima to be alive, nothing that Duryodhana does can do anything. In fact, whatever he does will only make Bhima stronger. So the next time that your enemies come to instigate and cause problems, you just remember, let them do what they have to do. If I am on the path of dharma, I can rest assured that I am going to be protected. Not only protected, he turned out even more powerful. I find this story extremely inspiring, this story of Bhima. Anyways, so now the kids continue, they're all being educated by Kripacharya. He's the acharya of all of them, teaching them warfare. But he has taught them everything he wants to know, and Bhishma Pitama feels that they ought to learn more. And so he's on the search for a teacher for them. And it so happens that one day these boys are playing outside in the field, and the ball that they're playing with, I don't know how 105 boys play with one ball, but they were all playing with one ball. And so the ball ends up going in a well. And so they're standing crowded around the well, and they're wondering, how are we going to get this ball out? Because back in the day, even princes had to live within bounds of discipline, I guess. They didn't just say, okay, leave the ball and we're going to go and get the next one. That's only today's children. Right? So now they're looking at this ball and they're thinking, how are we going to get this ball out of the well? And a strange man comes and walks up to them, and he looks at them and he says, what is the problem? And they said, well, our ball has fallen in the well and we're trying to figure out how, we don't know how to get it out. And this person looks at them and says, but are you not all kshatriyas? Have you not been taught how to use bow and arrow? And you know bow and arrow and you don't know how to get this ball out of the well? And they looked at him and they said, no, but we know how to use bow and arrow. Don't tell us we don't know how to use it. But how will a bow and an arrow get a ball out of the well? And so this person says, wait. And he takes off one of his rings and he throws it in the well. And behind the ring, he starts to shoot. He shoots an arrow, it goes through the ring and it hits the ball. And he shoots arrow after arrow into each arrow. And he makes a string of arrows. And he uses that and he pulls the ball out with this string of arrows and he gives it to the boys. And all of these boys are mesmerized. Can you imagine, like young boys, they see this as though magical thing happening in front of them. And they're like, who are you? And he says, you don't worry who I am. Go and tell your grandfather that you met me. He will know who I am. And so they go now to Bhishma Pitamaha. Pitamaha means grandfather, right? They go to Bhishma Pitamaha and they tell him what happened. And Bhishma Pitamaha thinks in his mind, oh, that must be none other than Dronacharya. And so he invites Dronacharya and he says, I would like you to become the teacher of these 105 princes in the kingdom. And so Dronacharya happily accepts that he will become the teacher of these children. Not teacher for free, paid teacher, like actually a teacher he becomes, right? And so he becomes the teacher who now continues their education in warfare, in political education, however you say it. Who is this Drona? Before the story can continue, we have to see the backstory of Dronacharya. Dronacharya, when he was a Brahmana, when he was young, he went to Gurukul with somebody called Drupada. He and Drupada had gone to school together. Drupada was a prince and Drona was a Brahmana. And they became BFFs, they became buddies. And Drupada at that time had told Drona, you know, I am the heir to the throne. When I grow up, whatever I have will be yours. I mean, you come and enjoy my riches and my wealth with me. We're best friends for life. Like that, he said. And so, yes, they grew up, and then Drupada went back to his kingdom, and then Drona went back to his life, and Drupada got married on his own side, and Drona got married on his own side, and then Drona had a child called Ashwathama. Drona was married to Kripi. Kripi was the sister of Kripacharya, who was the previous teacher of these boys. And so they had this son, his name was Ashwathama. And it so happened that they were so poor at one point in time that they didn't have anything to feed their son. And their son Ashwathama comes home from school one day and he tells his parents, you know, all my friends talk about this thing called milk. They say that there's nothing as tasty as milk except for the Amrit of the Devatas. What is this milk? Can I have some? And these parents just look at each other like they have no money to even get milk to feed their child. And so Drona remembers at this point that he had a friend called Drupada who has a kingdom. And so he says, let us go to my friend Drupada. And so they show up now to Drupada's palace, and Drona goes to him and says, do you remember me? I am your friend Drona from Gurukul, and I am here to ask you to help me. He could have helped him by giving him a job, he could have helped him by giving him a cow, he could have helped him in so many ways. But Drupada's power had got into his head by that time. And he said, who are you? I don't remember you. You're a low nobody, claiming to be friends with me. Don't you know friendship can only be between equals? Where are you and where am I? Don't come here claiming to be my friend, please leave. You juxtapose that to the meeting of Sudama and Bhagavan Sri Krishna. Completely different, completely opposite, isn't it? But now, Drona is hurt. He cannot believe what has happened. But more than hurt, he wants to take revenge now on Drupada. And he thinks, well, I can't take revenge on my own accord. I don't have any power right now. So he decides that he's going to find a Kshatriya that he can train to become so powerful that that Kshatriya is going to go and defeat Drupada on his behalf. And so he thinks, and he hears that in Hastinapur, there's a whole set of princes growing up. So he thinks, let me go there. I am sure one of them will be able to defeat Drupada. So he doesn't go there with the purpose of teaching these boys. He goes there with the purpose of finding someone that he can teach to go and defeat this enemy of his that he wants to take revenge on. So what is the intention of this education that he's about to give the boys? Not, may you all be great princes and fight for dharma and protect the country. No, I want you to become powerful so you can go and fight my enemy. This is the status quo of the reality of the situation. He was a Brahmana also. He's supposed to be learning and teaching Vedas. But he went and learned to teach, means he's supposed to be teaching Shastra, scriptures, not Shastra, weapons. He got his priorities wrong and he took up Kshatriya Dharma instead of Brahmana Dharma. Anyways, like this now, he starts to educate these boys. What that education looks like and how it evolves and what it turns into and how this grudge against Drupada becomes a dangerous thing, all of that we will see tomorrow. We will continue that tomorrow. Our time has finished for today. I wanted to get through more, but each story is so captivating, and there's so much more to say about each story. I have to keep holding back and saying, no, leave that, no, leave that, no, leave that, no, leave that, because otherwise we will still be in like Bhishma's birth still. Bhishma's growing up still. Right? So Mahabharata is wonderful. It has so many wonderful lessons for life. And the thing about it is that everyone will resonate with their own character. Everyone will resonate with a different lesson. Everyone will resonate with a different teaching. So whatever it is that resonates with you, you take that, you hold on to that, and you try to find a way for that to guide the goodness in your life. Okay, so we'll continue to see tomorrow. Tomorrow we are going to continue in canal number 2. Canal number 2. Do you remember what is the mandir name? New Anglet Vishnu Mandir. I know it is traffic time. I know that some of you may not want to make the trek with us. But if you want to find out what happens, it will be streamed on Facebook, and eventually the next day it will be put on YouTube. You can, oh yes, he made the trek from that side to come here today. So you're all welcome. And then Friday, Saturday, we're back in Tushin. Friday, we're in Tushin South. Saturday, we're back right here in Tushin Radhakrishna Mandir. And then on Sunday, we'll be in Windsor Forest. So those are all close by. You're all welcome to come and join and see how this story continues and evolves. And it's only going to get more and more and more interesting and more dramatic and more confusing. Because we're just being introduced to all the characters. They're yet to make so many big decisions that we are going to start to judge in so many ways. So many great things are going to start happening, and it's going to make us think in ways that we never thought we were going to have the potential to think. This is what the Mahabharata does. This is just the beginning. Okay. Share a couple of announcements, and then we will do Aarti and closing. See? Oh, just closing prayer? Okay. I'll just share a few announcements. Chinmay Mission is a... Oh, I'll tell on Saturday anyways. Everyone is here, no? Okay. Chinmay Mission is a teaching organization. Many of the faces here are familiar to me now. This feels like... Actually, Tushin feels like Chinmay Mission satellite ashram now. The warmth and the love with which we are received here, and the frequency with which we find ourselves here also. When we come and we see the children's excited faces and all, it really feels like this is an extension of the ashram on this side of the city. And we're so happy to be here. If you're all interested, we have classes going on online and in person in Monripo. Whatever we do online in person, we do online also. If you're interested in studying systematically the Ramayana, if you're interested in studying Bhagavad Gita, any of the Vedantic texts, you're studying and interested to understand Hinduism from the basics all the way to its complexities, we teach. Chinmay Mission teaches. We even, we're currently teaching a Pandit course. We don't do puja, we're not Pandits, but one thing that Chinmay Mission does is we also train people to be Pandits. Omkar here is part of the Pandit course that is going on right now. And like that, our work continues across the city. We come for camps wherever and all of that, you all know, right? So one day please come and visit us in Monripo also. We're waiting for you all to come over there to see us. Okay. Oh yes, our car has 3 spots. If anyone wants to join, you let Panditji know, and you're welcome to join if you want to go to the other side of West Bank. Oh yes, we'll bring you back also. Okay, then we'll close and we will see everybody. If not tomorrow or Friday, we'll see you on Saturday. Thank you, Panditji, so much. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om Shri Shri Sadgurunath Maharaj ki Jai. Shri Krishna Kanaiya Lal ki Jai. Hara Hara Namah Parvati Pataye. Hara Hara Mahadev. Hari Om Tat